That's why Shelley's here, right? To keep me on my toes. I'm starting all over. Okay, welcome everyone to Breaking Glass. It's a U-Turn production, and I was starting to talk about the reason that I wanted to start this. I graduated in the early 90s, and I ended up in a sales career that was in a male-dominated industry, in the carpet business, so a manufacturing industry as well. And found success and got promoted and was a VP of sales managing half the U.S. And in my entire career there, I never met another female VP. And the carpet industry is actually billions and billions of dollars. So I had a very different experience than a lot of people in corporate America, because there were a lot of women sales reps, but nobody in management besides me. And it's 20 some years. I'm going tomorrow to my 29th high school graduation reunion. So shows you how long I've been in the workforce. And what I became involved in Albert's group, or Albert's List. I don't know how many of you know that community on Facebook, but it's about 10,000 strong, and it's job seekers primarily in California is where it started. And what struck me is how many questions I would get from young women navigating some of the same challenges I navigated. And I thought that was slightly depressing, because I certainly thought when I was 24 that by the time I was this age, it would be different. And then I read the Harvard Business Review, where they surveyed 25,000 MBAs, and male and female. But the female, they surveyed 25,000 female MBAs, but they also surveyed male. And the sad thing was, now you have the best and the brightest from Harvard with an MBA, and a huge percentage of them were disappointed in where their career had ended up, and had faced all sorts of challenges, including challenges they set up themselves, where they fell into gender roles in their partnership, in their marriage, where the husband's career came first sort of naturally. It's not even that they planned it. And the women were not happy with that. They just sort of, I don't know how your relationships have been, but I've always been the breadwinner, but I also do too much work at home. It's just one of those things that we fall into, even if no one's making me do it. So through all that, and then I read a study that millennial women start their careers with all sorts of goals. They're certainly graduating at the same rate, or actually more college graduates are women coming out of the millennial generation. And 4 years in, have become very disillusioned. And a young millennial that I will not name actually said to me, "Where were you 4 years ago?" Because I actually changed my career goals and decided having a child was more important. And I really did it because I couldn't take the career disappointment. So that's sort of where this conversation started. Here comes Deb. And I think what I want to do first is have you introduce yourself. And hi, Deb, can you hear us?
I can. Come to find out, it was my husband's fancy-dancy microphone that was holding us up.
Yeah, that's Mark. So I just described the inspiration for Breaking Glass, and now I want to have you introduce yourselves. And I stole this from Eilette ever since you said this to me. What's your story, Eilette? I don't want to hear what you do. I want to know what your story is.
Well, it's not stealing. I mean, that's what the 21st century is about. Stealing and copying, I think, is very much a 20th century term. So I don't have enough time for my whole story, so I'll just give a brief story. I have lived in 4 countries. I live in the U.S. now. I have an amazing life where I'm working to find like-minded souls to change the world. And I don't mean it in a flippant way. I mean it in really understanding what the 21st century is about. It was interesting. I was at an event, a retreat a couple of weeks ago, and somebody said to me, "So what do you do when you don't work?" And I said, "Well, I life work." I've created a new term for the 21st century that I'm living, which is in the 21st century, we have a life. And in that life, we work. We don't have work-life balance because it's a myth that we can't attain. But my goal is to have more people in the world life working, where they really know what they want to do in the world. And so changing the world is not a flippant kind of thing. My story is about how do we take people to this new world where we're happy and we're not living on antidepressants, and we don't have conversations that we have today anymore. In my world, my story and science fiction would be about, we would be watching science fiction, we'd be laughing our asses off because we would be seeing scenes of fear. And I want to live in a happy world and a connected world, which is why I love technology, So I will stop here. I have lots of stories.
Okay, great. Deb, do you want to go? Tell us your story.
My story is simple. It's because I can. And I have a curiosity that kills a cat. I want to do everything. I want to be everything, always have. I come from a very blue-collar family where my dad says a woman's role is such and such. And he told me right off the bat, you can do and be anything you want as long as it's not a football player. No problem. Don't want to play football. But what I did do was figured out what I wanted to do, and I do it. It could be an engineer. It could be water skiing. It could be climbing a mountain. I took time off and became a teacher, and I had a student ask me, "You were this great engineer doing this great stuff." I'm like, "Yeah." And he goes, "Why'd you give it up?" I said, "Because I can. I can do anything I want." And that's kind of the message we want to get by. I had no connections, no network, no nothing. And yet you build it all up because you can. So I guess that's my message.
And I know we don't define ourselves by our career, but she is a rocket scientist too, which I find fascinating. Okay, Shelley. A real one. Yes.
Because it's cool.
Yeah. All right, Shelley, what's your story?
You know, my story is I've always taken a different path than pretty much most of my peer group. I've been a mom since I was 21. I've been a working mom, raising kids as a young married person, raising kids as a divorced single mom for 16 years. And, you know, it's funny, I listened to when you first said I do it because I can, and I first took that with, you know, people hear things and they interpret them instantly pretty quickly. And I thought, because you can, oh, you must be lucky because you can, because you have the wherewithal or whatever. And I love how your story was, it's because you believed you can, and you have not let anything get in your way. And I think that's really important, because much like you, I grew up in a very blue collar family. I learned a hard work ethic, a good work ethic from a very early age. I have worked my butt off my whole life. I've been very fortunate to have great mentors, most of whom have been men. I have worked predominantly in male-dominated industries, and I have excelled. And I think it is much due to the fact that I just have I've never thought that there was anything I couldn't accomplish. And my parents didn't teach me that. I think my parents had more traditional roles in mind for boys and girl children and that sort of thing. And I think my family has always just kind of looked at me like, holy crap, where'd she come from? And I think that there has just been, you know, and I'm the kind of person that if you tell me I can't, get out of my way, because I'm going to knock you over showing you that you're wrong.
Oh, and I like you.
Yeah, so I don't wait for opportunities to come my way. I don't wait for people to give me permission. And I also, to your point, you know, I've owned my own business for 20 plus years. So, you know, I've worked my way through the trenches to get to that point. But I live a life that is a life that is filled with work, and it's filled with family, and it's filled with fun, and it's filled with friends, and it's filled with adventure and travel, and
Miller Lite,
which is, you know, crappy beer, but that's what I drink. So go ahead and judge me. I don't really care. But to me, I don't have a work-life balance. I'm always working to a certain degree, but I'm always, you know, taking care of my, you know, people that work with me know I'm not going to schedule a call with you at 3:00 because that's when I go get my kids from school or whatever. So I think that really understanding how to set those parameters is an important thing. And I've been lucky I've been able to do that.
Well, I love this no work-life balance because I used to work like mad, and I loved it. I didn't mind doing it. I worked all the time. I didn't have a kid yet, and that was just the focus of my life at the time. But I used to feel frustrated when people were trying to force some sort of work-life balance. I loved what I did. I love what I do now. I have a kid. I have a fuller, different sort of life, but I totally gave up on trying to have the work-life balance. So I love this concept that I don't have to. Okay, that's the first piece of advice, right? You don't have to have a work-life balance as long as you're living. I mean, the one thing that technology has done, I work with Shelley, too. And I love it that I can work weekends or nights, but take off during the day. You know, I was a sales rep on the road for most of my career before I got promoted. So that was total autonomy. And so my entire career, I've had that kind of autonomy. I don't think I could ever go to a traditional office again, but I think technology lets all of us have that, right?
Well,
okay.
I think the other thing, Amy, I think that's important when we're talking about work-life balance is to understand that for most of us, the concept of balance doesn't exist. You know, I will never have all of my laundry done. I will never have, you know, it might be clean, but it's not folded and put away. My refrigerator looks like a disaster zone, you know, like, so you make choices along the way, and this is the crap that matters, and this is the crap that has to wait till tomorrow, you know. And I
love that, because one of the things Sheryl Sandberg, and I liked Lean In, I know there's a lot of controversy around it, I liked a lot of it, I got a lot out of it, but that's a better message than hire a cleaning lady, because the hire a cleaning lady got people upset, because what if you can't afford to?
Right.
It is, and some people don't like cleaning people in their homes. So I love the idea, although I bet you any money you can't go without making the beds.
I know. Well, you know me. You know that there's no bed ever in my house that's not made, but there's a whole lot of other things that are, you know, not perfect. So. But
I love that. I guess that's part of this. Okay, ditching work-life balance and just working and living, and not being perfect at everything.
Well, I think the key is living. I think you said the word. It's absolutely. Living. This work-life balance. Oh, come on, balance. My folks. So, Shelley, I was going to tell you, my father still does not believe I should be in the job I am, because that's still a man's job.
It is.
So the word can't, and he knows this. If anybody ever says can't to me, I say watch out.
Right. Well, that's what I want to talk about is language, because I've had a lot of younger people asking, because they've been told to stop using certain words, younger women being told to stop using the word just, as in, I just want to reach out, because that minimizes things, and stop saying I'm sorry. And there's I was raised by a very dominant woman, and my grandmother, and generations of dominant women. All the stories in my family history are about dominant women. So language was never an issue for me. I don't think I apologize too much. Although Canadians are sort of at a disadvantage there, right? They can't help it. They apologize all the time. But there's something...
I'm Canadian. No apologies, because I'm also Israeli and American. So
this is the question. What do you think about people being told to take certain things out of their language like that? Like, do you because I'm a realist, so I realize we negotiate and work in the real world, and the language is the language of business. I hate saying that it's a paternalistic language or a male-dominated language. To me, it's just much simpler to say it's the language of business, because it is what it is. And
it's a kumbaya language. I am so tired of this kumbaya. In fact, I use the words, this gal needs to put her big girl panties on. And I know I can get sent to HR for doing that, but it's like, come on, you know. I have been told we have to watch what we say, and it's more of helping the people feel good about themselves instead of actually holding them accountable for something wrong.
That's the opposite of what I'm saying. So you've been told that you're too tough with your language?
I think that's very common. I think that absolutely very common. I think in certain management positions, there's an expectation that you be more warm and fuzzy, more hand-holding, more whatever. That is not my management style at all. And yet I think I'm still a relatively good person to work with. But, you know, I don't believe in beating around the bush or dancing around issues. I think you have to be honest with people. But again, I own the company. So, you know.
And you have for 20 years.
So I don't work in a big organization where somebody's evaluating, you know, when somebody's looking at how I might communicate with a team, Deb, and say, you know, you're too direct or whatever. But I think that happens all the time.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. So that's fascinating to me. And like I said, I worked in one industry primarily, and the carpet industry is a rough and tumble. My cursing fit in perfectly there. I was never told that I was too direct, but that's just the way that business works.
That is, you know, there's a lot of research on that men and women managers can say the exact same things. And, you know, a woman is perceived as being a bitch, or
that I got all the time.
Difficult to work for, or whatever, leading a team in the same way, because feedback and criticism from a woman is one thing, from a man leader is another thing. And that's a very real.
Okay, so this is what I want to talk about, because what I'd had to decide at some point in my life is it was okay to be a bitch then, because I wasn't going to change them from calling me that. And I had to use the style that I use. It's how I communicate. Like you, I'm very direct. And I was, I was getting shit done. Getting stuff done. So I just decided I'm going to be a bitch to some people. That's just the title. Like, I decided to not try to not be one, just accept it as something that's going to be said behind my back. It's not like I didn't talk about my male boss behind his back too. But what do you think about that? It's something that women just have to accept, that if they're assertive, okay, I let go.
Well, 3 years ago, I fired myself from corporate America. I had a very successful, defined career in high tech. I worked around the world. I gave up my office in 2003 and needed to use technology because I had employees around the world. And often in my last job, right before I fired myself, I was about every month when I would come and see my boss, he would tell me that I'm doing a great job. However, I need to grin F these people because I'm being too assertive. I could say ass, but I don't want to say the F word on this. And I found that I just kind of continued to do the job I did because we didn't get to be the number 2 revenue generating country for my company by me being polite and nice to people. We had to really get the work done in the marketplace. And early on for my first career in market research in Canada, I got told by my boss, he said, I have some feedback for you. And I was like, really, what is it? He goes, well, it's not you, it's the company. And I said, really, what is it? And he said, well, you just need to be a little less assertive. And a week later, I came into his office and I said to him, I knocked on his door and I said, and I was probably in my early 20s at the time. And I said, do you have some time? And he said, yes. And I said, I really have been thinking about what you told me. And I had a flyer with me. And I said, I was wondering if I could take this class. And I put it down on his table. And he said, get the hell out of my office. And the flyer was how to be a more aggressive woman in the workplace. And
I love that class.
And I just didn't stop at that point because my family was very supportive of me and telling me, like, as opposed to Deb's dad, my dad was very chauvinistic, but he told me that I could do anything in the world. And I believe that I can. And I'm not going to have anybody stop me. I think we need to speak the current language to get to the new world at some points. But I think that the question is not the rules of business. The question is, how do we want to show up in the world? I just did a talk a couple of weeks ago, and one of the women after the talk came up to me and said, what if my managers aren't about what you just shared with us? And I said, well, I don't know you, so I can't give you a prescription, but if you want to spend more time, I'm happy to talk to you. But if it was me in your shoes, I would leave. That's what I would do, because why would I want to spend the short time we have on this earth being frustrated? I want to work with like-minded souls who make a difference. So I just think that the opportunity here is to create a new conversation and for us to come back together, not just women, but men and women, and create this new world of work for business.
I had a situation happen yesterday that was in a sense a reverse role. So I know this is talking about assertive women and things like that and how we need to be speaking towards other folks, and including men and women. So yesterday, my HR at 9 o'clock in the morning, I'm getting phone calls that say, your lead just made a woman cry because of the way he spoke to her. I made her cry because I told her she had the wrong color fingernail polish. Not really, but that's an example. So we're having what I'm coming to the perception is it's not necessarily how I'm approaching everyone. It's I have to approach everyone individually. And I have to know that this one is a drama queen, or this one is a drama king, or this guy can actually handle me telling them you're wrong and you need to do it this way, short, to the blunt, to the point, or do I need to make a training session for this other person? So it's that's something you learn as a sales manager, because you have to motivate everybody differently.
I don't know that I apply that regularly in business, but I think I probably do. So wait, I want to go back to one thing that I don't remember which one of you said about kumbaya language. Deb, you were talking about it, right? I did this episode for a Switch and Shift called Pockets of Excellence, and I interviewed Liz Wiseman. Do you know her, the Wiseman Group? So she had this incredible thing when we were talking about pockets of excellence where she said, make sure, and the language is very powerful, that you don't create pockets of good where everyone's happy and nothing is getting done, right?
Pockets
that
of
there is a huge difference.
Right.
And I was like, wow, I get it. You know, I can, it's the reality is, as much as, we all want to have a wonderful work environment, and we should, it's still business, and there's still performance goals that have to be met. So there's a difference,
Absolutely.
right?
Absolutely.
It's interesting because I was thinking, when I brought up the language issue, I was talking about women that are younger, and I think this is one thing we have to be very mindful of. All four of us are older and have been out there in a long time and have achieved a certain degree of success so that we feel more comfortable saying, screw it, call me a bitch. But when I was 21, it was a different, I had a different take on it. And so when I talk to a lot of younger women, a lot of them come from the millennial work I've done and from that Albert's group, Albert's list, is that they really are struggling with being too meek. Someone in here asked, and Mana Massage, I don't know what your real name is, but asked about asking for a raise and negotiating a promotion. Like, what is the language to women? Is there language that women should try to eliminate from the, words that they use and ways of approaching it? Yeah.
Feel. I feel like, no, don't feel anything. Quantify everything. If your performance has proven you are worth something more, quantify it. I have saved the company so much money because of this performance, and here's where I'm moving forward with that, where I expect to do this for the company. Performance. It's all about data as far as the way I look. But if you say I feel, then that means you're feeling something.
And apologizing and apologize less. So here's what happened to one of my mentees. She's a really, really, really good recruiter, and she was kicking butt for a company out in Silicon Valley, and she wanted a raise. She was making too little, and she's very, very confident. She had, excellent performance over a couple years, and she went in and asked for a raise. And her boss proceeded to tell her everything that she did wrong. All of a sudden it was, this is what you don't do right. He obviously didn't want to spend the money. But when she said, that's not accurate, and defended herself, he said, you're getting emotional. And she said to me, Amy, I swear to God, I wasn't emotional at all. And I believe her because she is a very tough cookie. And that's a trigger word for me. I was called emotional when I had a huge sales success once at a sales conference with my boss who was intimidated by me. And he said, oh, something about it's all emotional. I'm like, the numbers are real. I don't care. I told him to not confuse passion and emotion. It's two very different things, right?
Absolutely.
I said to him, I never fired anyone over the telephone, which he had done. And it was like a famous HR story in our company. I never lost my temper. And I think that, women are told to not be hysterical and emotional still in the workplace. And that's like, what do you do in that situation that my mentee was in? What do you do? I'm sorry, I'm reading the chat. What do you do if you're in that negotiation and someone says you're becoming emotional? What do you do?
I would ask questions. I mean, one of the things that I would do is I don't think we understand empathy enough. And in a paternalistic structure, we're being told there's an authority and there's a power play that's going on. If you can, the first thing I would do is stop and breathe. I think we've been also trained that we have to get a response, and the faster we are, the better we are. I would take the time to take control of the situation and not just jump into it. And I've been in those situations, right, where you want to go tell them what you think, but you can't because there's a power play going on. And I think one thing that's really important is to ask questions. I think it's one of the biggest skills of the 21st century is the ability to go, tell me a situation where you think you've been emotional. Like, turn the table as well and feel that you have the ability to do it. Like, just because that person, what do they control? What do you fear? There's a bigger question there that is beyond just that transaction of being in those shoes. Each one of us has to think about what is on the other side of what we fear. Do we fear that we have to be there and put up with it because we fear we're going to lose our job? Well, I have news for you. There's tons of jobs in the universe. right? There's tons of possibilities. And so I think it's a deeper issue that we have to explore around what we fear and where we want to do and what do we want to create in the world. And do we want to work with somebody who says this to us? I didn't last long in that first job. I left because I was like, if this guy thinks I'm assertive, then I'm not going to be able to be who I am. And so I left.
Assertive is okay. Aggressive is the man is assertive and the woman is aggressive. That's usually the terminology. I don't mind if someone describes me as assertive. Is that a negative thing?
It was a negative in my situation because he didn't want to say aggressive. He wanted to say assertive. I mean, and by the way, I'm 27 eternally, so you got a young person on this conversation. Every year,
I'm so glad you said that. Because Mark did not marry. I keep telling Mark, you married a young woman here.
Exactly.
Okay. I want to shift it a little bit. Okay, wait. I want to talk about asking for promotions. The thing that struck me so much in Lean In, because I was in these situations where I was, I was the boss of a lot of really incredible women and men. I had more men than women, and the women rarely stepped up for the promotion. And in Lean In, she talks about people not taking a seat at the table and not asking. And I don't think it's only a female trait. I think that there are many people who do good work and they think that should be recognized even if they don't ask for the recognition. I don't think that is solely female. I think it's just if I do really well, someone should recognize me instead of you saying, hey, recognize me, I would like the promotion. I mean, do you have any advice about navigating that discussion? Because women tend not to ask.
Well, I think that women tend not to ask in general. And whether it's for a promotion, whether it is for the business, I speak on this topic on a regular basis, and I share a lesson that I learned along the way. And so here I am. I've built a very successful business. I am very confident in what, our company delivers for clients. And one day, it was probably about 6 years ago, I was at an event in New York, and it was at one of those 140 characters conferences. I don't know if you remember that, Amy. It was a really long time ago. It was one of the first, kind of social media conferences. And I was there, and I met up with a friend of mine from Philly, and he came in, and we've been friends for a long time. He came in, and then I met up with another friend of mine from New York, and she was a VP at a kind of a mid-sized PR firm in New York City. And so I was the conduit. I introduced the two of them. We'd all been friends for a long time, and we hung out together while we were in New York. The conference was over, and within the next 30 days, I'm talking with my friend from Philly on the phone. It's like, hey, what are you doing? We're just catching up, blah blah blah. And he said, well, I'm headed to New York. And I said, why are you going to New York? And what now? He went into the city all the time, but I said, what's taking you there? Well, I'm meeting with Stephanie because we're gonna talk about redoing her website. And I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you kidding me? Like, I've looked at Stephanie's website. I've seen how terrible it is. I've told her how terrible it is. We build websites. And you know why I didn't get the business?
You didn't ask for it.
I didn't raise my damn hand. I didn't ask for it. And you know what he did? He met her. He saw a problem. He raised his hand. He asked for the business. He got the business. He delivered a piece of shit website because he's not in the business of developing websites. But you know what he did? He raised his hand in it. So for me, it was, and I've lived my whole life asking for business. I mean, business development, when you own your own business, is what you do. But sometimes when it's a friend or somebody you have a close relationship with or whatever, sometimes women do a crappy job of just asking for the business. And we kind of think like, well, they know what we do. When they need our help, they'll ask us. Same is true for promotion. You really have to, lay out your case. Here's what I've done. Here's what I agreed to come to work for this amount of money. Here's what I've accomplished. Okay. If now's not the right time, when can we revisit this discussion again? Because I'm not going to stop lobbying for this promotion, increase in salary, because I do feel like it's warranted. So when can we discuss this again? And that's nobody ever goes to sleep at night worrying about how much money you make or don't make. Nobody. Maybe your mother. okay? But it's not your boss, and it's not anybody else in the company that you work for. So if you're not your biggest champion, I'm not sure who's going to be.
That's absolutely correct. You've got to be your biggest champion. After speaking with Amy, I walked into a young millennial gal that I thought, I'm watching, she's doing well, she's speaking up. Can you hear me? Yeah.
Yep.
She's speaking up, and I thought she would be great for this panel at some point in time, or I'd love to have her.
Invite her. I definitely want millennial voices to come on as well. Yeah.
And I have a couple of candidates. I have one that's phenomenal because she's not only overcoming the female thing, she's also overcoming the she's a foreign exchange person. So, but this gal that I walked up to, an industrial engineer doing gangbusters, I really like her drive. She backed off. No, I can't do that. She became demure. She became this person that I'm like, what is the problem here? You have a voice. You're doing great. You have something to say. No, I just can't.
Was it the technology part? Because I definitely have had many people that aren't used to being in a video conference type of setting. No?
Nope. No.
She
does not want to speak. I think it takes her time to get warmed up to doing anything, but she will not raise her hand. I did start watching her in meetings and stuff. Unless she was spoke to directly and she has 100% knowledge of what she's talking about, she will not speak.
Okay, so then Beer Wars, I don't know the real name, so I hate using
Annette. Her name is Annette.
Hi, Annette. So she mentioned about women needing to be more confident. Okay, so how do you teach someone to be more confident?
Really confidence, though. I'm sorry, I interrupted, but is it really confidence, or is it more of because I'm confident?
Well,
but I don't necessarily always want to raise my hand.
I'm talking about a young woman. So my daughter's 8, and she's still at that age where you think you can do anything, and she's getting some of those little sexist things on the playground. Girls can't play wall ball because she's really good at it, and her best friend's a boy, and he doesn't like her playing because she's good, and she beats him, and he's got an ego, So she's still at that supremely confident age. But I know that the teenage years are coming and things happen, and there are reasons that women behave the way they do when they get into work. So say you see a young woman who is very bright and still hasn't found her voice. It doesn't have to be a woman, of course, but where do they learn to be confident,
I think they learn to be confident in life. I mean, it's more an issue of knowing who you are and what you want to do in the world and what you instill. I mean, I want to live in a world where we stop asking kids, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to ask kids, what do you like? What don't you like? And I think that when we don't do that, these people get into the workplace because they've always been trained to find out what do they want to be instead of who do they want to be and who do they want they are. We have one of the biggest crises in the world right now with young boys. Young boys are lost. We're not having that conversation as well. Mm-hmm. And quite frankly, I'm going to jump into the last question. It was really interesting. I heard of a very senior executive who realized that she was being underpaid. And they gave her an opportunity to come in and give a number of what she would be paid. And she came in with a number that was close to a couple $100,000 more than she was paid. I mean, think about it. But think about it. She gave it, not only did they give it to her, but then she had to take time off because she started to think about how ridiculous it's been that all of them have known that she's been underpaid.
That's right.
$200,000 a year. And so this conversation is just much bigger than age. The conversation.
And you know what that says to me? In sales, we had a rule. You never gave too big of a sale. Like my reps had autonomy to give sales. Well, you can't give too big of a sale because then they'll know that you're making, and you don't want to give away your margin. You don't want them to know. Don't drop it $7 a yard, right? If I would have probably left that company, I mean, I probably would have. Like, what happened to me is I went into my VP of sales job with no experience in that role, so I got paid the entry level fee, which was good. It was a good salary for me. It was a big pay jump anyway. And my good friend took the western half of the U.S. and he was younger than me. And I found out after we left the company that he was making like a good 40% more than me. And I know it was gender-based, So Shelly and I have had these conversations on Facebook. Here's my thing on it. I don't ever want Breaking Glass to be anti-male. But the reality is that women make between 76 and 83 cents on the dollar to men. Millennials are earning more compared to their counterparts. We'll see if that holds as they move up the career ladder. I told some funny story about my daughter, and I have definitely raised her to be a very confident, outspoken child, and it's caused her a little friction with one of her teachers last year. But a friend of mine, a male friend, chastised me because it was like one of these girls can do anything boys can do and they can do it better kind of jokes I made. And he chastised me and said, you're teaching her sexist things as well. We're never going to get anywhere unless, you teach her that they're both equal. And I said, listen, Jeff, with all due respect, what I'm doing is shoring up for her for a lifetime of being told she's not as good as men. So I don't care if she's a little cocky right now at 8. Because I want her to have enough cockiness in her body, confidence, that when she's beat down at 18 and 23 and whatever, that she still comes out of it like I did, an assertive person who asked for what I want. And I do think that I'm big because my grandmother was tough as anything and swore more than Shelley, and I think that's where it comes from, So anyway,
can I jump in on that one?
Absolutely.
Well, two things. I think that I agree with you, Eilert, that this is a bigger conversation. I think we need to lead by examples, but I also think that we need to set the standards and help our younger counterparts. I had great parents. My dad, even though he was like, I don't think you should do this, but you know what? That's your choice. You can. I'll support you. That was phenomenal to me because I had that, but I still had to raise my hand. I still had to go in. But it was my teachers, my mentors, and even my colleagues who were behind me, helping me get there. And I think that's where my role now as not the young hotshot anymore. I'm now the middle-aged. Here we are.
Middle-aged hotshot.
Yeah, middle-aged hotshot. Now it's my role to take these gals and these men, these gentlemen that I'm working with, and bring them up. Also, teaching them. Here's how you ask for your raise. Here's how you ask for your promotion. Gosh, the second point was the lifestyle. So I have an 8-year-old also. I have an 8-year-old boy, and he'll come in and say, Mom, this gal, you're a tomboy, aren't you? And he just learned the word tomboy. And I said, well, why do you think I'm a tomboy? And he says, because you play sports. I said, yes. He said, okay, so that means the moms who are sitting in the cars watching us at our practice games, you don't get to be that. You have to be out here. So it's like he's broken through. Some girls can do this, some girls can't. And I think that's where we need to get to, is not where it just needs to be matter of fact. This gal over here, this little 8-year-old wants to play with dolls and play Foursquare and talk to her friends, whereas this little girl wants to play wall ball. And Amy, I swear that little boy, her best friend, is so intimidated by her.
Now she's taller than him.
I love it.
We came back from summer vacation. I was like, let's measure you. And he's like, I don't care if she's taller than me. Like, he gets totally intimidated.
He gets all
by
flustered.
Yeah.
So this attitude is, I gotcha. And that's where I try to promote. Now, when JW goes, well, I'm better because of this. I was like, no, you're not better. Well, I'm better because I'm a boy. Nope, you're not better because you're a boy.
That's
You're
right.
better because you have the skill. Now, your skill needs to help this person.
That's great.
So I try to turn it around. Let's help everybody get to.
All right. So Sherry
that.
just said something in the conversation in the chat that made me something I wanted to talk about. So she said, I sometimes wonder if women are the biggest enforcers of making other women adhere to the status quo of gender expectations. And there's a young woman named Jillian Page. Some of you know her. She's been in my millennial think tank, and she's doing a series for U-Turn called Don't Make the Coffee. And I love it. And it's really, she's not just talking to women because she's talking to younger people coming into the workforce, but she lectures. And when she had to mentor the new intern, she was like, do not be good at cleaning up the kitchen. Leave the microwave a disgusting mess. Do not ever make the coffee. If it's empty, do not drink any. Don't make any. Just suck it up until someone else makes the coffee, because you will find yourself falling into doing support roles. And it will just happen where all of a sudden you're doing all of this support work and not getting to do some of the better work, right? And that's how things start. And I thought, wow, I because I can't stand messy kitchens, would probably have been the young person in there cleaning it up. And it would have taken a lot of strength for me not to make the coffee.
Amy, I still make the coffee. I
do
still
too.
keep the kitchen up. And it's also
you work at home, Shelley.
No. You know what? I made the coffee. I cleaned up the kitchen. If the front walk of the business needed shoveled, I shoveled it. I mean, I
toilets need to be clean.
Yeah, I understand Jillian's advice. I do. And I think that really, as I've listened to this conversation, I think the one thing that we all need to keep in mind and that we need to impress upon young people, men or women, is that everybody's different. We're all wired differently. We all have different personalities. You know, we all are capable of many, many things. And you cannot we should never expect someone who's not, you know, totally outgoing and very comfortable speaking in front of other people and super confident. We shouldn't expect that person to be able to do things, to be able to become something that they're not. It's perfectly fine to be an introvert. It's perfectly fine to be quiet. It's perfectly not fine to beat people out of your way, like many of us, based on our personalities, have done. And I think that's really important for young people to understand. You can be true to yourself. You can still be very successful. You can clean the damn kitchen. If you want to make a pot of coffee, you can make a pot of coffee. That doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be pigeonholed into every menial job there ever was. I mean, I kind of am a,
you might not be, because you're Shelley, and you'll say, no, I'm not doing those other things. But I can see how a meeker person would get pigeonholed into it.
Maybe.
Right?
I don't know.
I would still clean the kitchen because I couldn't bear it to not be clean, and that would be a totally different issue.
I think we need to have a different conversation on this, because I think one of it is, like, in the future we're not going to have, you know, working as a futurist, and in the future we're not going to have kitchens. So we don't have to worry about it because we'll be working more globally and virtually. So I think, you know, things that are important are really, again, knowing yourself in a way of how you want to be seen and what people want to see you, and how you attach yourself to certain tasks. I know for my employees, and I mentored a lot of women during my high tech years, and one of the things one of my employees would drive me crazy because she would be rushing and running and like always like so kind of like, and I'd be like, hey, even if you're late, walk to the meeting. Never sit in the back of the room. Pull yourself a chair around the table if it's not a virtual meeting, and always show up as who you are, because you're amazing and you're talented. And don't let anybody take that away from you. And so I think when we start having conversations about making the coffee, and we go back into the stereotypes.
Yeah, you're so right.
Of the conversation.
Okay, so let's talk about this. Mentoring, because years ago I met this really brilliant attorney up in the Scranton area who was trying to start an advocacy group for female attorneys to mentor younger attorneys, because one of the biggest challenges you saw in law were that there weren't that many women at the top, and when they were there, and you know, you see this in a lot of businesses, and with the new, you know, with the workforce the way it is, you know, a much, much bigger part-time workforce, a lot more remote working. I don't have all the numbers in my head, but the workforce is changing. And also the average American worker only stays on the job 4.5 years. So companies, not all companies have a formal mentorship program. You know, it's sort of become more fluid in a lot of organizations. And I think that's a real difficult thing for younger people, because the millennials I know really hunger for mentoring and advice. They aren't that stereotype that I hear out there where they think they know everything. I mean, they might be assertive and speak their mind, but that's why I mentor so many. I had to get to a point where I can't do this anymore. Now I'm trying to match people. How many of you mentor someone now? Oh, you do?
I mentor quite a few, and I've been asked to. I have a gal at work right now that hasn't gotten ahead, and she does not understand. She's helped people get ahead. She's helped men get ahead. She thinks it's a female thing. So I have not been out. She wants me to mentor her. She wants to ask me to mentor her. And as I explained through the liaison who is trying to get us together, I said, I will not mentor her unless she comes to me. She has not come to me.
Yes.
She hasn't raised her hand. It's that fear thing, Isla, that you were talking about. It's the fear thing. But I also want to say that I have 2 young ladies that are millennials, and they're mentoring me.
Yeah,
so I love this reverse mentoring that is going on. So I have my mentors, even from college. I still have them from college. I have them across the board, across my network, which back then wasn't called the network. It was just called, people I used to work with. So, and the mentoring is, the mentoring opportunity. I had a gentleman come up to me the other day. We were having a conversation, and I was just talking to him, and he asked me a couple pieces of advice. 2 weeks later, he comes up to me and says, I heard what you said, and I tried it, and it worked, and I want to thank you. And I said, fantastic. He goes, well, would you mind if I talk to you some more later? To me, that's okay. I'm mentoring. I love that. It's not the word. It's not him going, can you be my mentor?
But you know what? I've talked to a lot of younger people about this. There's something. So I have a mentor. What's interesting is besides my grandmother, I haven't had any business mentors that were women, and a lot of it has to do with where I worked and so on. But there's something that happens when it's a formal mentorship and you agree upon it, where especially if you're not extremely close friends and it's just somebody you admire, it alleviates the need for a bunch of small talk and chatter. I mean, Jillian's the one who taught me that. When she went up to someone and officially was like, "Hey, my mentor," because I admire you business-wise and I respect you, it meant she didn't have to pretend to want to know everything about the person's children or any of the other stuff you do to get close and build relationships. It also creates a safe place where you can go for business advice and show business weakness, right? That's why I do believe, I actually formally asked someone this year to be my business mentor because I knew I needed somebody really honest who wouldn't let me, dazzle them. What?
Screw around.
Yeah, dazzle them with my ideas. He'd be like, listen, what'd you get done? This is what you said you'd get done. I needed somebody really, really tough.
I love those people.
And it changed our relationship, even though I always went to him for advice. When I asked him to be my formal business mentor, he was like holding me accountable. It's something, I think it's really important to have that.
Good point. Very good point.
I think that's really important, Amy. I think that's someone to think about, and not thinking about as a mentor, but think about who could help you. I tell people a lot of times I need adult supervision. Because I get all over the place. And so, one of the reasons I didn't leave corporate America for a long time was because I was the executive sponsor for our millennial program. And I felt a responsibility to stay, and I was mentoring women all over the world, young women all over the world. And I loved the women that I was meeting, especially from emerging markets. There were amazing women that I got a chance to work and learn from, as Deb mentioned earlier. And, we need to stop thinking about mentoring formally because we don't know how to do it. We haven't known how to do it for decades now. We need to think about who could help us. And as women, we suck sometimes at asking for help. I mean, we just suck at it.
I think as humans we do too, don't you?
But as women in particular, we have this fear about asking for help. And I think that what I did see from the women coming more from emerging markets in my work was that they were much more fearless and were ready to go out there to really connect with people. I think the other thing is, if you wake up in the morning and you ask yourself a question of, what conversations am I going to have today? What is it, my intent, and what I want to learn, and what the impact I want to have? It's a different question than asking just about mentoring, because we have this really cool thing. I don't know if you've heard about it. It's called the internet. And in the internet, we have this really cool tool called video. And with video, which I think millennials and all of us really love, if you set up conversations every week with unlikely people and really learn and connect in a different way. I mean, we're having a chat right here on the right side of my screen. And there are people here that you could just reach out to and say, hey, I'd love to jump on a video call with you and have a conversation, or I have a question. I mean, that is the change in mentoring that we need to have, is to really think about the tools that we have that are readily available to us to connect. Because I think beyond mentoring, a really important conversations we need to have is around community, right? How do we support each other more? And the mentoring is one-on-one, which is great. But how do we get together to solve real life problems as a community and really look at the solutions around it? And my hat is off to you, Amy, for starting this, because I think this is a really, really important conversation, because I would love to live in a world where we have more confident women who are able to just go and live and not worry about, do I say this in a meeting or do I get a raise? And just
that's where I get stuck with the training yourself to take away certain words. There's something really unnatural about that to me that I don't like. I mean, I get that women should be more assertive in certain situations, but when we start telling people to, it's like when Shelley, when you said everybody's different. Well, everyone's language is different too, and maybe we shouldn't tell people to eliminate certain parts of how they talk. You know, there's something that just seems artificial. All right, Jeff Shuey asked something I want to ask. I want to get feedback from you guys. He said, I think he was talking about women in technology and specifically that group, but where do the men belong? Because his take on it, I believe, Jeff, and you can jump in, was if the men aren't in the conversation, how does it get moved anyway, right? How does it change? And like, that's why I'm glad to see so many men brave enough to show up here. So I want to get your feedback. And, you know, Shelley, you've been around the tech world forever and Ilette's in it. And I mean, we all are really. Social media to me is so closely linked to it. I know we're not developers, and we're not, programmers, but we're still, our livelihood is dependent on technology in many ways. So what do you think about that?
Well, I think you absolutely have to involve men in the conversation. How do you affect any kind of change if you don't? You know, we can get together, as women and have these conversations all day long, but excluding men from the conversation does no one any good. And I'll give you I'll give you an example of how I think that you can do that. And again, I don't know you and I let very well, Deb, but I know you very well, Amy. And part of it is just talking about these issues and talking about disparities or participating in having shows like this, whatever. Because I'll tell you what happens now to me is that I get back channel messages all the time from people that are putting on conferences who say there's a dearth of women speakers. You know everyone. Who do you know that would be great for this slot? How can I make this happen? All that sort of thing. So I think that's how. But that's and they come to me because they know I'm passionate about gender diversity, and they know that I'm a champion of women in the tech space, and they know that I welcome them reaching out to me. And you know what? I'm also not shy if I'm talking to somebody, and they're inviting me to speak at an event, and I'll laugh and I'll say, I'm one of 17 guy speakers. Really?
Yeah.
And I'll say that.
I love that, though. I love that because that means you get to get in there and speak your spiel.
You know what? I think it's great to be one of 17, but let's be honest, one of 17, I'm not winning anything. So my point is, what I do is I'll say to a conference organizer, I'm very happy to speak at your event, provided you pay me to do so. But look at your panel of speakers and what it says about the fact that I'm one of 17.
That's right.
And I am not afraid to say that. And I think that, I just think that having these conversations, having people that you work with, people that you're associated with, know that this is something that's on your mind, that you're interested in talking about, you're interested in their opinions about too. I'm always interested in what men have to say and what their thoughts on this are and how we can work together to move this forward. So I think that it's just important that women not get that we don't get militant about this, that there is a reality that this exists, and the only way we're ever going to change it is to work together. It's the only way.
And Ilet said in the chat, we have to stop fragmenting,
right?
Which I think is that can cover gender, race, and so many other issues we have, religion and everything else. So I think that's actually a great place to end. We can go on. We have 3 minutes, but that was a fabulous way. And I think that it's funny because the logo that we did for Breaking Glass is a bunch of fragments of glass.
I love the logo.
Yeah, we have to stop fragmenting. I think that's a good place to end it. So, okay, since I'm a total newbie, I'm going to stop recording. I know that means we're still live, right?
Well, thank you so much, everybody, for showing up for this event. You guys have been awesome and participating in the chat, and it's great to hang out with all three of you.
Yeah, and I just want to add that let's continue the conversation.
Oh, we will. We're going to do this monthly.
No. I mean it on a deeper level. I mean, all four of us are online, are available in the world.
Yeah,
and
yes.
people can easily reach out to us. We don't have to wait for a transactional event to happen. And
Yes.
I think it's really important because I think the question is what are the conversations we're having and who's involved? And we think that just because we put a time on the calendar, that's the only time we're allowed to have it. Because most of the social media platforms we have today, we're yelling at each other, and people aren't really learning on how to connect and have conversations. So what I would hope is that the four of us, if anybody wants to reach out, have a conversation, let's go do it.
Yep, I would like to add to that also. I love the fact that we have a social age. This is a social world. Our social tools, LinkedIn, Facebook, Blab now. I love this, Amy.
Me too. Way better than Hangouts. Sorry.
This is so cool. Twitter chats, all of it. We're all, as far as I'm concerned, we have all of these things. So reach out to me on LinkedIn. Let's continue the chats. Let's keep going. I love this. Thank you for asking me, Amy. This is awesome.
Okay.